The wedding banquet hall sparkled with 1,000 lights, red silk drapes cascading like waterfalls of good fortune. I sat at table 12, feeling completely out of place in my simple office attire, while around me, guests wore designer gowns that cost more than my monthly salary. Xiaoyu, you look like you'd rather jump out the window. My friend Yuyan laughed, resplendent in her wedding kipao. Come on, enjoy yourself. When will you get another chance to eat at a place like this? She was right. The Golden Phoenix was where celebrities held their weddings, where business deals worth billions were sealed over century-old wine. A girl like me, orphaned at 22, working at a small marketing firm, would never set foot in such a place again. The wine was flowing freely, expensive baijiu that burned my throat but warmed my empty stomach. I was halfway through my third glass when fate took a seat beside me. He was tall, impossibly handsome. His black suit tailored so perfectly, it looked like it was sewn directly onto his broad shoulders. His features were sharp like a marble sculpture, but when he smiled, something gentle flickered in his dark eyes. You look like you're planning an escape route, he said, his voice low and warm like aged whiskey. Is it that obvious? I laughed despite myself. I'm more of a quiet hot pot dinner person than this. I gestured at the elaborate 10-course feast, the ice sculptures, the live orchestra. Li Zheng, he said, extending his hand. The name rolled off his tongue like he was used to saying it, but something flickered in his eyes, as if he'd almost said something else. Chen Xiaoyu, I replied, my hand disappearing in his warm, strong grip. For the next hour, we talked and laughed like old friends. He listened when I spoke about my dreams of opening my own bakery someday, about the children's books I wrote in my spare time. When the 8th toast was called and everyone stood swaying with drink, he leaned close to my ear. Would you like some fresh air? The hotel's rooftop garden was a secret paradise. Jasmine vines climbing ancient brick walls, fairy lights twinkling between flowering trees, the city sprawling below us like scattered diamonds. It's beautiful, I breathed. Yes, he said, but he was looking at me. Beautiful. When he kissed me under the starlight, gentle but desperate, like he'd been waiting his whole life for this moment, I felt something shift in my chest. Something that felt dangerously like destiny. What happened next was a blur of heated touches and whispered promises. His hotel suite was a palace of marble and silk, but all I could focus on was the way he looked at me, like I was precious, like I was everything he'd ever wanted. Are you sure? He whispered against my neck, his voice rough with want. I've never been more sure of anything, I replied, and meant it. We made love with the passion of lovers separated for lifetimes, finally reunited. He was gentle but desperate, worshipful but hungry, murmuring my name like a prayer against my skin. When I woke at dawn, golden light was painting the room in shades of honey and amber. He was still asleep, one arm flung across the pillow, his face peaceful in a way that made my heart ache. I wanted to stay. Heaven help me, I wanted to wake him with kisses, to ask his real name, to see where this impossible night might lead. But reality crashed over me like ice water. I was nobody, an orphan with a dead-end job and barely enough savings to last a month. He was clearly somebody. His clothes, the suite, the easy way he'd navigated the high society wedding, all spoke of wealth and privilege I couldn't even imagine. What if he was married? What if this was just another conquest? What if the magic couldn't survive morning light? So I slipped away like Cinderella fleeing the ball, leaving only a note on expensive hotel stationery. Thank you for the most beautiful night of my life. X. 1 month later, staring at 2 pink lines on a pregnancy test, I wondered if I'd made the biggest mistake of my life. Present day, 5 years later. Mama, wake up! The sun is saying good morning. I opened my eyes to find my 5-year-old son perched on my bed, already dressed in his kindergarten uniform, his dark hair sticking up in every direction despite my efforts the night before. Good morning, my little emperor, I said, pulling him down for a cuddle. Did you brush your teeth? Yes, and I made my bed, and I fed the goldfish, Ri recited proudly. Can we make the special pancakes today? Li Ri, that's what I'd named him, though I'd kept my surname Chen on all his documents. Li because it was common enough not to raise questions, but also because sometimes late at night, when he slept peacefully beside me, I imagined his father might have the same surname. Ri meaning wise and auspicious, because from the moment he was born, he'd seemed like an old soul in a tiny body. Special pancakes require special occasions, I reminded him, ruffling his hair. What's special about today? Every day with Mama is special, he declared with the solemnity only a 5-year-old could manage. My heart melted completely. This child, my miracle, my everything, had such an enormous capacity for love it sometimes overwhelmed me. We lived simply but happily in a small apartment above Chen's bakery in the Hongshan district. Mrs. Chen had hired me when Rui was 6 months old, taking one look at my baby strapped to my chest and declaring, "Children belong in kitchens. They learn the rhythm of life there." She'd been right. Rui had grown up surrounded by the scent of fresh bread and the gentle chatter of neighborhood regulars. Our customers adored him. Old Mr. Wang always brought him new picture books. Mrs. Liu saved interesting rocks from her garden walks. And the college students who came for study sessions let him help with their homework. It wasn't the life I'd planned. I dreamed of using my marketing degree, maybe working for a big company, traveling the world. But watching Rui carefully arrange cookies in the display case, his little tongue poking out in concentration, I couldn't imagine any other life. "Mama, why don't I have a baba like the other kids?" he asked one morning out of nowhere, his innocent question hitting me like a physical blow. I knelt down to his level, choosing my words carefully. Some families have mamas and babas. Some just have mamas, some just have babas, and some have grandparents or aunties and uncles. What matters isn't what kind of family you have, but how much love is in it. Do we have lots of love? We have enough love for 10 families, I assured him, kissing his nose. Good, he said, apparently satisfied. But if I ever meet my baba, I think I'd like him to be tall and kind, and maybe he could teach me how to build things. What kind of things? Big buildings where families can live together and be happy. The kids at school say some children don't have homes, and that makes me sad. At 5 years old, my son already had a kinder heart than most adults. Sometimes, looking at his serious little face, I wondered about his father. Did he have the same thoughtful nature? The same devastating smile that could light up a room? I tried not to think about it too often. The past was past, and we were building a beautiful future, just the two of us. Across the city, Li Zhenyu stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his corner office on the 60th floor of Li Tower, looking out at the city he'd helped build. At 32, he was everything the media called him: brilliant, ruthless, devastatingly handsome, and completely untouchable. He was also completely miserable. "Young master, the Su family has called again about the engagement announcement," his assistant, Lu Fei, reported, setting down his afternoon tea with practiced precision. Zinyu's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Tell them I'm considering it." He'd been considering Su Mei's father's proposal for 6 months now. On paper, it was perfect, a union between two of the city's most powerful families, combining Li Group's real estate empire with Su Industries' manufacturing might. Su Mei was beautiful, educated, from the right background. She was also calculating, cold, and looked at him like he was a prize to be won, rather than a person to be loved. "Sir," Lu Fei ventured carefully, "your father called. He's expecting you for dinner tonight. Cancel it. I have the Chen Industries meeting." That meeting was moved to tomorrow. Zhenyu sighed. Li Wei-ming, his father and the founder of Li Group, had been increasingly insistent about settling down and providing grandchildren. At 68, he wanted to see the family line secured before he stepped down as chairman. But every time Zhenyu looked at potential brides, all accomplished, beautiful, appropriate women, he found himself remembering a different night, a different woman. Chen Xiaoyu. Even her name was like music in his mind. He'd lied to her that night, giving her a shortened version of his name because he'd been so tired of being Li Zhenyu, heir, CEO, prize bachelor. For one night, he just wanted to be Zheng, a man who could fall in love with a beautiful woman without calculating the political implications. He'd spent months looking for her afterward, hiring private investigators, checking wedding guest lists, following every lead. But Chen Xiaoyu had vanished like a ghost, leaving only the memory of her laugh, the taste of her lips, the way she'd looked at him like he was her whole world. Eventually he'd given up, told himself it was better this way, that real love was a luxury men like him couldn't afford. But he'd never stopped thinking about her. "Young master," Lu Fei interrupted his brooding. "The charity gala is tonight. You're expected to attend with Miss Su." "Fine," Zhenyu said tiredly, confirm with her assistant. Just another performance in the endless theater of his carefully controlled life. The Grand Regency's Autumn Charity Gala was the social event of the season. I stood at the edge of the garden reception in a borrowed midnight blue dress, feeling like an imposter among the designer gowns and glittering jewelry. "Stop looking like you want to hide behind the potted plants," my friend Lily scolded, pressing a glass of champagne into my hand. "You look beautiful." "I look out of place," I muttered, tugging at the dress's neckline. "You look mysterious and elegant. Trust me, half the women here are dying to know who you are." I'd only agreed to come because Lily's company was one of the event sponsors, and she'd insisted I needed a night out. Mrs. Liu was watching Rui, and for once I was trying to remember what it felt like to be Chen Xiaoyu, the woman, not just Rui's mama. But 20 minutes into the evening, I was already planning my escape when Rui's voice cut through the elegant chatter. "Mama!" I spun around in shock to see my son racing toward me across the manicured lawn, his school clothes rumpled, his hair wild with excitement. "Rui, what are you—" "Mrs. Liu was supposed to—" "Mrs. Liu got sick," he announced breathlessly, "so I came to find you. This place is like a palace, Mama." Before I could panic about his disruption of the elegant event, he'd already darted away, drawn like a magnet to the beautiful garden fountains. "Rui, wait!" I hurried after him, my heels clicking on the stone pathways, but he was already out of sight among the sculpted hedges. 5 minutes of searching led me to a quieter section of the garden, where I found my son comfortably settled on the lap of a distinguished gentleman in an expensive gray suit. They appeared to be having a very serious conversation about the man's antique pocket watch. "The little hand shows the hour, and the big hand shows the minutes," Rui was explaining with grave importance. "But you have to count by fives for the minutes part." The older man, probably in his 60s, with kind eyes and silver hair, chuckled warmly. "You're quite the intelligent young man." "What's your name, child?" "Li Rui," my son replied without hesitation. My blood froze. Li Rui. Why had he said Li Rui? "Li Rui," the gentleman repeated thoughtfully, something strange flickering across his features. "And how old are you, young Master Li?" "I'm 5, and I can read chapter books and help Mama at the bakery and—" "Rui," I called, forcing brightness into my voice as I approached. "There you are, sweetheart. I'm so sorry," I added to the gentleman. "I hope he wasn't bothering you." The man looked up at me, and I saw his eyes widen slightly. "Not at all. He's a delightful child. Very." He paused, studying my face intently. "Very familiar." Before I could ask what he meant, a shadow fell across us. "Father, what have you found?" The voice sent a shock of recognition through my entire body. Rich, warm, with that slight rasp that had haunted my dreams for 5 years. I looked up slowly, my heart hammering against my ribs. Standing there was a man in a perfectly tailored black tuxedo, tall and commanding, with sharp, aristocratic features that were achingly familiar. His hair was styled with precision, and there were faint lines around his eyes that spoke of years and responsibility. But those eyes, those were the eyes I saw in the mirror every morning when I looked at my son. "Rui," he said softly, crouching down to eye level, his voice gentle. "You're quite the explorer, aren't you?" He was looking at my son with an expression I couldn't quite read, intense, wondering, as if he was seeing something impossible. "I like exploring," Rui replied seriously. "Mama says curious minds discover the most interesting things." "Your mama sounds very wise." The man's gaze lifted to mine, and for one heart-stopping moment, I saw recognition flicker across his features. But then it was gone, replaced by polite courtesy. Of course he didn't recognize me. I was nobody, a random woman at a charity gala. The resemblance to my fantasy lover was just my imagination running wild. "I'm sorry for the intrusion," I said quickly, helping Rui down from the older gentleman's lap. "Say thank you to the nice gentleman, Rui." "Thank you for showing me your watch, Grandpa Li," Rui said solemnly. "Grandpa Li?" My son was calling a stranger Grandpa Li? "Come on, sweetheart," I said, taking his hand. "We should let them get back to their evening." As I led Rui away, I felt eyes boring into my back. But when I glanced over my shoulder, both men were watching us with identical expressions of stunned contemplation. Later, when Lily found me to drive us home, she was practically bouncing with excitement. "Do you have any idea who you were talking to?" she demanded. "Should I?" I asked wearily. "That was Li Weiming, chairman of Li Group, and his son, Li Zhenyu. They're only the most powerful family in the city." Li Zhenyu. A name hit me like lightning, and suddenly everything clicked into place. Zhang, short for Zhen Yu. The expensive suit, the luxury hotel suite, the way he'd carried himself like he owned the world. Because he practically did. Xiaoyu, are you all right? You look like you've seen a ghost. I had seen a ghost. The ghost of the man who'd given me the most beautiful night of my life, then disappeared into the dawn. The ghost of my son's father. That same night, Li family estate. Did you see the way that child looked at you? Li Weiming asked his son as they stood in his private study, glasses of aged whiskey in their hands. Zhen Yu stared into the amber liquid, his mind racing. He has the Li family eyes. More than that, he has your exact expression when you concentrate, the same way you tilt your head when you're thinking. The older man paused meaningfully, and he called himself Li Ri. Children often make up names, father. Do they? Or do they sometimes know things we don't understand? Li Weiming moved to the window overlooking the garden where his late wife had planted jasmine vines. That boy, he felt like family, Zhen Yu. That's impossible. Is it? You've been restless for years, son. Refusing every marriage proposal, looking for something you couldn't name. When was the last time you were truly happy? Zhen Yu closed his eyes, and immediately he was back in that hotel room 5 years ago, watching dawn break over a woman's sleeping face, thinking he'd found his other half. Chen Xiaoyu, the name she'd given him that night, the same name the child had called her. I want a background check, he said quietly. On the woman? On both of them. Everything. Employment history, financial records, medical records if you can get them. Li Weiming smiled knowingly. I'll have the information by morning. And father, keep this between us for now. Of course, but Zhen Yu? The older man placed a gentle hand on his son's shoulder. If that child is what I think he is, you have a grandson, and I have no intention of missing a moment more of his life. The next morning, I was opening Chen's bakery for the usual breakfast rush, when the door chimed and I looked up to see a figure that made my heart stop. Li Zhenyu stood in my tiny neighborhood bakery like a prince who'd wandered into a peasant's cottage. His charcoal suit probably cost more than I made in 6 months, but he wore it casually, like expensive clothes were as natural as breathing. Good morning, he said, his voice politely formal. I was hoping you might have coffee. I stared at him, my mouth suddenly dry. Up close in the bright morning light, there was no denying it. This was him, my mysterious stranger, the father of my child, standing 3 feet away, asking for coffee like we were strangers. Which, I reminded myself, we essentially were. One night 5 years ago didn't make us anything more than pleasant acquaintances. Of course, I managed, moving behind the counter on unsteady legs. What can I get you? I added, whatever you recommend, he said, settling onto one of the high stools. His presence seemed to fill the entire small space, making everything feel more intimate and charged. I made him my favorite, a cappuccino with real vanilla and a touch of cinnamon, served with one of Mrs. Chen's famous red bean pastries. My hands trembled slightly as I worked, hyper-aware of his eyes following my every movement. He took a sip and made a small sound of appreciation. This is excellent. You made this yourself? I learned from Mrs. Chen. She's been perfecting that recipe for 20 years. Why was I babbling? This was just a customer, nothing more. And you've worked here long? 4.5 years. Since just after Rui was born, but I didn't say that. We made careful small talk while he finished his coffee. Safe topics about the neighborhood, the weather. Nothing personal or revealing. But I was intensely aware of him studying me, as if he was trying to solve a puzzle. When he left, placing exact change on the counter, he paused at the door. I'll be back, he said simply. It sounded less like a promise than a warning. True to his word, he returned the next morning. Same time, same polite demeanor, same careful questions. This time he asked about Rui. Your son, Rui, wasn't it? How's he adjusting to kindergarten? Something in his tone made me look up sharply. There was an intensity in his dark eyes that hadn't been there during yesterday's casual conversation. He loves it, I said carefully. He's always been good with other children. Intelligent boy, very mature for his age. Yes, he's always been an old soul. Why did this feel like more than small talk? And his father? The question was asked casually, but I felt the weight of it. It's just Rui and me, I said firmly. Something flickered in his expression. Satisfaction? Relief? I couldn't tell. It must be difficult, raising a child alone. We managed just fine, I replied, perhaps more defensively than necessary. He nodded slowly, finishing his coffee in contemplative silence. When he left, I found myself staring after him through the window, my mind churning with questions I didn't dare voice. Why was Li Zhenyu, billionaire CEO, coming to my tiny bakery every morning? What did he want from me? And why did his presence feel both thrilling and terrifying? Mama, the handsome uncle is here again, Rui announced, peering through the bakery window with undisguised curiosity. It was Saturday morning, and I'd brought him to work while Mrs. Chen visited her sister. For the past week, Zhenyu had been a regular fixture in our morning routine, always polite, always careful, always leaving me with more questions than answers. Don't call him handsome uncle, I scolded gently. That's not polite. But he is handsome, Rui protested, and he looks at you the way Prince Eric looks at Princess Ariel in the movie. Before I could process that observation, Zhenyu was walking through the door, dressed more casually than usual in dark jeans and a navy sweater that made his eyes look even darker. Good morning, Rui, he said, crouching down to my son's level with practiced ease. How are you today? Very good, Rui beamed. Mama's teaching me to measure flour properly. Want to see? I'd love to. Without waiting for permission, Rui grabbed Zhenyu's hand and pulled him toward the kitchen. I followed, amazed by how naturally this powerful businessman allowed himself to be led by a 5-year-old. This is the secret, Rui explained seriously, demonstrating with a measuring cup. You have to level it off with the back of a knife, or the cookies come out wrong. Very professional technique, Zhenyu said, and he sounded genuinely interested. May I try? For the next hour, I watched Li Zhenyu, heir to a business empire, one of the city's most eligible bachelors, learned to make chocolate chip cookies under the patient instruction of my kindergartner. He listened carefully to Rui's chatter about school and friends, asked thoughtful questions, and when my son accidentally spilled sugar everywhere, he just laughed and helped clean up. You're good with children, I observed as Rui ran to wash his hands. I like honest people, Zhenyu replied. Children haven't learned to pretend yet. Most children haven't. Most adults have forgotten how not to. His eyes met mine. It's refreshing to meet someone who remembers. There was something in his tone, an undercurrent that made my chest tight. Before I could analyze it, Rui was back, bouncing with excitement as the timer announced the cookies were ready. When it was time for Zhenyu to leave, Rui looked genuinely disappointed. Do you have to go to work now? He asked. I do, but maybe I could come back another time? Really? You want to come back? I can't think of anywhere I'd rather be, Zhenyu said softly, his eyes finding mine over Rui's head. After he left, Rui settled beside me on the floor, his expression thoughtful. Mama, yes, sweetheart. I think the handsome uncle is lonely. What makes you say that? He looks at us like he wants to stay, but doesn't think he's allowed to. Rui leaned against my shoulder, like when I see other kids with their babas at the park, and I want to join them, but I don't know if I should. My heart clenched at the innocent observation. Rui, it's okay, Mama. I have you, and that's enough. But maybe the handsome uncle doesn't have anybody, out of the mouths of babes. That night, after Rui was asleep, I found myself standing at my bedroom window, looking out at the city lights and thinking about loneliness, about the careful way Zhenyu asked questions, about the intensity in his eyes when he looked at my son. What did he want from us? And why was I starting to hope it was more than just coffee and cookies? Su family mansion. Su Mei stood before her floor-to-ceiling vanity mirror, applying the final touches to her perfect makeup. At 28, she was everything a modern Chinese heiress should be. Beautiful, educated, ruthless when necessary. She was also desperately in love with a man who barely noticed her existence. Miss Su, her personal assistant, knocked softly. The car is ready for your lunch appointment. Which lunch appointment? Mei asked absently, focused on choosing between 2 pairs of diamond earrings. With the baker. Su Mei's hand stilled. For 3 weeks she'd been having Li Zhenyu followed by a private investigator. The reports made for fascinating reading. The mighty Li heir, visiting the same tiny bakery every morning, talking to the same unremarkable woman, and her bastard child. At first, she dismissed it as charity work, or some kind of business arrangement. But yesterday's photos had told a different story. Zhenyu baking cookies with a 5-year-old boy, looking more relaxed and happy than she'd seen him in years. looking at them like they were his family. The smaller diamonds, she decided, fastening the earrings with sharp, precise movements. We wouldn't want to appear excessive. Chen's bakery was even more pathetic than she'd imagined. Sumei wrinkled her nose at the simple wooden tables. The handwritten menu, the display case full of ordinary pastries that probably cost less than her morning coffee. The woman behind the counter, Chen Xiaoyu, was prettier than her photos, but in a completely ordinary way. No designer clothes, no professional makeup, no sign of the sophisticated polish that men like Zhen Yu required in their companions. "You must be Chen Xiaoyu," Sumei said, her smile sharp as a blade. "I'm Sumei. I think we need to have a conversation." She watched the other woman's face carefully, seeing the flash of recognition at her name. Good. She knew exactly who she was dealing with. "I'm not sure what we'd have to discuss," Xiaoyu replied carefully, continuing to arrange pastries. "Li Zhenyu." The words hit their target. Xiaoyu's hand stilled for just a moment before she resumed her work. "I don't know what you mean." Sumei laughed, settling into one of the cafe chairs like she was holding court. "Please, the whole city is talking about Li Zhenyu's new hobby. Some people find it charming. And you? I find it temporary." Her smile turned predatory. "Men like Zhenyu have phases, you see. First, there was the artist. Lovely girl, completely inappropriate. Then the journalist. Brilliant woman, wrong background. Now there's you. I think you should leave." "Oh, I will. But first, let me give you some friendly advice." Sumei stood gracefully, smoothing her designer skirt. "Enjoy this while it lasts. Play the part of the mysterious single mother if you must. But don't mistake his attention for anything permanent." She moved closer, her voice dropping to an intimate whisper. "Men like Li Zhenyu marry women like me, darling. We marry within our class, within our world. You're a delightful diversion, but you're not wife material." "Get out," Xiaoyu said quietly, but Sumei could see the way her words had hit home. "One more thing," she added, pausing at the door. "That adorable little boy of yours. Children get so attached, don't they? It would be a shame if he got hurt when Zhenyu moves on to something more suitable." She left without another word, satisfied by the stricken expression on Chen Xiaoyu's face. Phase 1 complete. The change in Xiaoyu was immediate and devastating. When Zhenyu arrived for his usual morning coffee, she was distant, professional, avoiding his eyes. "Is everything all right?" he asked, studying her carefully controlled expression. "Fine," she said briskly, not looking up from the espresso machine, "just busy." But her hands were trembling slightly as she worked, and there was a tension in her shoulders that hadn't been there yesterday. "Xiaoyu," he said her name quietly, waiting until she was forced to meet his gaze. What happened? For a moment, he saw vulnerability in her dark eyes, a flash of something that looked like pain. Then her walls slammed back into place. "Nothing happened. I just think this arrangement has run its course." "What arrangement?" "You coming here every morning. It's not necessary." Zhenyu felt like he'd been punched. "Not necessary? You're a busy man, Mr. Li. I'm sure you have better things to do than drink coffee in a neighborhood bakery." "Mr. Li." Formal address felt like a slap. "And if I don't want to do better things? Then that's your choice. But Rui and I, we don't need charity." "Charity?" His voice was dangerously quiet. "Is that what you think this is?" She finally looked at him directly, and he saw something that looked like heartbreak in her expression. "I think you're a kind man who got caught up in playing house with people who could never really be part of your world. But reality has a way of intruding, doesn't it?" Someone had gotten to her. Someone had poisoned her against him, made her believe, what? That he was slumming? That she wasn't good enough? "Xiaoyu, if someone said something to you—" "No one had to say anything," she interrupted. "I just remembered who I am, and who you are." She turned away, effectively dismissing him. After a long moment, Zhenyu placed money on the counter and left without another word. But as he walked away, he made himself a promise. He would find out who had done this to her, and they would pay. Sumei was hosting her weekly mahjong party when Li Zhenyu walked into her penthouse unannounced. The other women, wives and daughters of prominent families, looked up in surprise and delight at the unexpected appearance of the city's most eligible bachelor. "Ladies," he said with practiced charm, "would you mind giving Miss Su and me a moment alone?" They left with barely concealed excitement, no doubt already composing text messages about this dramatic development. When they were alone, Zhenyu's pleasant expression vanished. "You overplayed your hand," he said without preamble. Sume set down her teacup with perfect composure. I don't know what you mean. The bakery visit, whatever you said to her. His voice was deadly calm. Did you really think I wouldn't find out? Find out what? That I had coffee with your little pet? She smiled coolly. I was merely introducing myself to the woman who's been monopolizing so much of your time. And what exactly did you tell her? Nothing that wasn't true. That you're Li Zhenyu, heir to one of the city's most powerful families. That you have responsibilities, expectations, a certain standard to maintain. She stood, moving closer. She needed to understand her place. Her place, he repeated softly. And what place is that? Temporary entertainment. A way to rebel against your father's marriage expectations. Sume's smile turned triumphant. Really, Zhenyu, did you think you were the first wealthy man to have a dalliance with someone inappropriate? She understood immediately. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Let me be very clear, Zhenyu said, his voice like ice. If you go near Chen Xiaoyu or her son again, if you so much as think about interfering in their lives, I will destroy you. Not your father's company, you, personally. You're threatening me? Over some nobody baker? I'm promising you. He moved closer, and Sume took an involuntary step back. Your trust fund, your social standing, every carefully constructed piece of your perfect little life. I can end it all with one phone call. You wouldn't dare. Try me. His smile was sharp as a blade. And Sume, if I find out you've been spreading any rumors about Chen Xiaoyu, about her son, about anything concerning my family, I'll make sure everyone knows about your gambling debts. Your father would be so disappointed to learn his precious daughter has been bleeding money at those underground casinos. Sume's face went white. How did you? I make it my business to know everything about people who threaten what's mine. He turned to leave, then paused at the door. Oh, and the engagement your father keeps pushing? Consider it permanently off the table. I'd rather die alone than tie myself to someone so petty and vindictive. After he left, Sume sank into her designer chair, her perfect composure finally cracking. She'd underestimated how much that woman meant to him. But Sume hadn't become the queen bee of high society by giving up easily. If she couldn't have Li Zhenyu, she'd make sure that peasant baker couldn't have him either. Li Group headquarters, executive floor. Young master, you've been staring at that contract for 20 minutes without reading it, Lu Fei observed carefully. Zhenyu looked up from the merger documents, his mind clearly elsewhere. For 2 weeks, he'd respected Xiaoyu's wishes and stayed away from the bakery. For 2 weeks, he'd been absolutely miserable. Sir, if I may, the private investigator's report on Miss Chen arrived this morning. Zhenyu's head snapped up. And? Liu Fei hesitated. Perhaps you should read it yourself. The file was thin but explosive. Chen Xiaoyu, 28, unmarried mother. No father listed on Li Rui's birth certificate. Birth date, February 18th, exactly 9 months after Yu Yan's wedding. But it was the final page that made Zhenyu's hands shake. A photograph from the hospital records. A newborn baby with unmistakably Li family features. The same dark eyes and stubborn chin that stared back at him from mirrors every morning. My son, he whispered. Sir? He's my son, Liu Fei. The boy, Rui, he's my son. His assistant's eyes widened. Sir, are you certain? Look at him. Zhenyu held up the photograph with trembling fingers. He has my father's chin, my mother's nose, my eyes. And the timing. He closed his eyes, remembering. 9 months after that night. What will you do? I don't know. For the first time in his adult life, Li Zhenyu, master strategist, corporate genius, had no plan. She's been raising my son alone for 5 years. She never even tried to find me, to tell me. Perhaps she didn't know how to reach you, Liu Fei suggested gently. Or perhaps she didn't want to. The possibility cut deeper than he'd expected. Cancel my afternoon meetings. I need to think. That same afternoon, I was closing the bakery early, exhaustion weighing on me like a physical thing, when Mrs. Chen appeared from the back room with a knowing look. Child, you've been moping around here like a ghost for 2 weeks. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong, I lied, continuing to wipe down tables that were already clean. And where is your handsome coffee customer, the one who made you smile every morning? I froze. I don't know what you mean. The tall one with expensive clothes and sad eyes. He He hasn't been here since you started looking like someone stole your favorite dumpling. Mrs. Chen had known me for almost 5 years. She'd been like a grandmother to Rui, a mother figure to me when I desperately needed one. She also had an uncanny ability to see straight through my defenses. It's complicated, I said weakly. Love usually is. She settled into one of the chairs, clearly preparing for a long conversation. But complicated doesn't mean impossible, child. It's not love, I protested. It was just what? Just the first time I've seen you truly happy since Rui was born? Just the first man who made you light up like a lantern festival? Tears burned behind my eyes. He's Li Zhenyu, Mrs. Chen. Li Zhenyu. He's practically royalty and I'm nobody. Bah, the elderly woman waved her hand dismissively. You think I don't know who he is? You think I haven't seen the way that boy looks at you? Like you hung the moon and stars? Sume made it very clear that men like him don't end up with women like me. Sume? Mrs. Chen's expression darkened. That spoiled princess came here? I nodded miserably. She's right, though. What could someone like Li Zhenyu want with a single mother who works in a bakery? Perhaps, Mrs. Chen said quietly. You should ask him instead of listening to jealous women. Before I could respond, the bell above the door chimed. I looked up to see Rui bursting in from his after-school program, followed by Mrs. Liu. Mama, guess what happened at school today? He launched himself into my arms, his backpack sliding to the floor. We had to draw pictures of our families, and I drew you and me and what? He paused, his 5-year-old face scrunching in concentration. And what, sweetheart? I drew someone else too, but I don't know why. Teacher asked who it was, and I say it was my Baba, but then I got confused because I don't know what my Baba looks like. My heart clenched. What did you draw him looking like? Tall, with dark hair and nice eyes. And he was holding my hand. Rui looked up at me with innocent confusion. Do you think my Baba has nice eyes, Mama? I thought of Zhenyu's dark, intense gaze, the way he looked at Rui like he was precious beyond measure. I think your Baba has very nice eyes, I whispered. Li Weiming had lived through war, revolution, and decades of cutthroat business dealings. He built an empire from nothing, raised a son, and buried a beloved wife. At 68, he thought he'd seen everything. But watching his son pace the family study like a caged tiger while agonizing over a 5-year-old child was something new. You're going to wear a hole in that carpet, he observed mildly. I can't just show up at her bakery and announce that I'm the father of her child, Zhenyu said, running his hands through his perfectly styled hair. She'll think I'm trying to take him away from her. Are you? No. Maybe. I don't know. Zhenyu collapsed into the leather chair across from his father. I want to be part of his life, but she's made it clear she wants nothing to do with me. Has she? Or has she been frightened away by someone who doesn't want her to have anything to do with you? Li Weiming had his own investigators, his own sources of information. Sume's visit to the bakery hadn't gone unnoticed. Even if that's true, how do I fix this? How do I make her trust me? The same way you'd handle any important negotiation, his father said pragmatically. You find out what she wants, and you give it to her. She wants me to leave her alone. No, son. She wants to protect her child. There's a difference. Li Weiming poured himself a measure of whiskey, considering his words carefully. That little boy, my grandson. Do you know what he called me when we met? Grandpa Li. Zhenyu said quietly. Not Uncle Li, not Mr. Li, Grandpa Li. As if he knew, somehow, that we belonged to each other. The older man's eyes grew misty. In 5 minutes, that child gave me more joy than I've felt since your mother died. Do you think I'm going to let some spoiled heiress keep me from him? What are you suggesting? Li Weiming smiled with the cunning that had built the Li Empire. I'm suggesting that perhaps it's time for me to do some shopping. I hear Chen's bakery makes excellent almond cookies. The next morning, Li Weiming walked into Chen's bakery dressed in a simple gray cardigan and slacks, looking like any prosperous grandfather rather than the chairman of a multi-billion-dollar corporation. Good morning, young lady, he said warmly to Xiaoyu. I was hoping you might have some of those almond cookies my friend recommended. Xiaoyu looked up from arranging pastries, and he saw her eyes widen slightly with recognition. Mr. Li, she said carefully. Of course. How many would you like? A dozen, I think. For my morning walks, I like to feed the birds in Zhongshan Park. He paused, letting his expression grow wistful. Though it gets lonely sometimes, talking to pigeons. An old man like me doesn't have much company these days. He saw her soften slightly at the admission. Good. She had a kind heart, just as he'd suspected. I'm sure your family keeps you busy, she said politely, while packaging the cookies. Family? Li Weiming chuckled sadly. My son works 18-hour days, barely has time for dinner with his old father. My wife passed away years ago. No grandchildren to spoil. He let the statement hang in the air meaningfully. As if on cue, Rui appeared from the back room, where he'd been doing homework at a small table. Grandpa Li, he exclaimed with delight, running over for a hug. You came to see us. Rui, Xiaoyu said quickly, you shouldn't bother, mister. He's not bothering me at all, Li Weiming said firmly, lifting the boy easily despite his age. In fact, young Master Rui, I was hoping you might help me with something. What kind of help? Well, I have this big empty house with a garden, and I was thinking it could use some flowers, but I don't know anything about plants. Do you think you and your mama might come look at it? Give me some advice? Rui's eyes lit up. Mama loves flowers. She has books about gardens. Does she now? Li Weiming looked at Xiaoyu with twinkling eyes. How wonderful. Perhaps this weekend? Mr. Li, Xiaoyu began carefully. I don't think. Please, Mama, Rui begged. Grandpa Li needs our help. Li Weiming watched the internal struggle play across her face, the desire to refuse warring with her inability to deny her son's innocent request. It would mean so much to an old man, he added gently. And there's a playground on the estate grounds. Rui could play while we discuss flower arrangements. Can we, Mama? Please? Finally, she nodded reluctantly. I suppose, if you really need the help. Wonderful. Li Weiming set Rui down, his plan falling into place perfectly. Saturday afternoon, then. I'll send a car. As he left with his cookies, he was already mentally preparing phase 2 of his strategy. His son might be brilliant at business, but when it came to matters of the heart, he clearly needed his father's guidance. Saturday afternoon arrived gray and drizzling, but nothing could dampen Rui's excitement about visiting the big house with a playground. I dressed him in his best clothes, a navy sweater and matching pants that made him look heartbreakingly handsome. I'd agonized over my own outfit, finally settling on a simple cream dress with a camel-colored coat, wanting to look respectable without appearing to try too hard. The car that arrived was not the modest sedan I'd expected, but a gleaming black Mercedes with a uniformed driver who treated us like visiting dignitaries. Mama, look! Rui pressed his face to the window as we drove through increasingly upscale neighborhoods. The houses keep getting bigger. When we turned through ornate iron gates marked with the Li family crest, my breath caught. The Li estate sprawled across several acres of perfectly manicured grounds. The main house, a stunning blend of traditional Chinese architecture and modern elegance. Welcome to my home, Li Weiming said warmly, appearing at the car door to greet us personally. Rui, what do you think of the playground? My son's eyes widened at the elaborate play structure visible across the lawn. Slides, swings, climbing walls, everything a child could dream of. Can I go play? He asked breathlessly. After we look at the garden areas, I said firmly. We're here to help, Mr. Li, remember? For the next hour, we walked through the extensive gardens while Li Weiming pointed out areas he wanted to improve. But I began to suspect this was less about landscaping and more about something else entirely when he led us to a quiet pavilion overlooking a koi pond. Xiaoyu, he said gently, while Rui was distracted by the colorful fish. May I speak frankly? Of course, Mr. Li. I know who you are. I know about that night 5 years ago, about my grandson, about why you never tried to find us. My blood turned to ice. Mr. Li, I don't know what you. That boy is the image of my son at that age. Same eyes, same stubborn chin, same way of tilting his head when he's thinking. His voice was kind but firm. And you're the woman who gave my son the only genuine happiness he's known in years. I sat down heavily on the pavilion bench, trying to process everything, my legs suddenly unsteady. You know, I know that you've raised a remarkable child on your own for 5 years. I know that whatever my son did wrong that night, it wasn't intentional. And I know that my grandson deserves to know his father. Mr. Li, Grandpa Li, he corrected gently. That's what Rui calls me, and I'd like you to do the same. Tears were threatening, but I forced them back. This is complicated. The best things usually are. He settled beside me on the bench. Tell me what you're afraid of, child. The kindness in his voice undid me. I'm afraid he'll take Rui away. I'm afraid Rui will prefer his rich, powerful father to his ordinary mother. I'm afraid. I took a shaky breath. I'm afraid of falling in love with him again and having my heart broken when he remembers what different worlds we come from. Again? Li Weiming's eyebrows rose. So you did love him that night? I barely knew him. Love doesn't follow rules of time or logic, the old man said wisely. And as for different worlds, he gestured around the beautiful estate. This is just a house, child. Family is what makes a home. Before I could respond, Rui came running back, his cheeks flushed with excitement. Grandpa Li, Mama, come see, there are turtles in the pond. As we stood to follow him, Li Weiming caught my arm gently. Give my son a chance, he said quietly. Give yourself a chance. Some fates are worth fighting for. What I didn't realize was that our garden tour had been carefully orchestrated. As we rounded the corner of the main house, following Rui toward the turtle pond, a familiar figure emerged from the front entrance. Li Zhenyu froze when he saw us, clearly not expecting visitors. He was dressed casually in dark jeans and a white button-down, his hair slightly mussed as if he'd been running his hands through it. He looked younger, more approachable, but the shock on his face was unmistakable. Baba! Rui exclaimed without warning, breaking free from my hand and running toward Zhenyu. My heart stopped. Rui, no! But my son had already launched himself at Zhenyu, who caught him instinctively, his expression shifting from shock to something that looked like wonder. Baba? Zhenyu repeated quietly, looking down at the child in his arms. I knew it was you, Rui said seriously, his small hands framing Zhenyu's face. I drew you in my family picture at school, and you look exactly the same. Rui, I said shakily, moving toward them, you can't just call people. But he is my Baba, isn't he, Mama? Rui's innocent question hung in the air like a challenge. I can tell, we have the same eyes. Zenyu's gaze lifted to mine over our son's head, and I saw everything in his expression. Love, pain, hope, fear, and a desperate kind of longing that took my breath away. Yes, I whispered, the truth finally escaping. Yes, he's your Baba. I knew it. Rui threw his arms around Zhenyu's neck with 5-year-old triumph. I knew you'd come find us. Li Weiming cleared his throat delicately. I think I'll take Rui to see the koi fish while you two have a conversation. Come along, grandson. Let's give your parents some privacy. Grandson, Rui repeated with delight as his grandfather led him away. I have a grandpa and a Baba now. When they were out of earshot, Zhenyu set me down carefully, his hands lingering on Rui's shoulders as if he couldn't quite believe the child was real. How long have you known? I asked quietly. 2 weeks, maybe longer if I'm honest with myself. He looked up at me, his expression raw. Why didn't you tell me, Xiaoyu? Why didn't you try to find me when you knew you were pregnant? I didn't know who you were. You gave me a false name, disappeared without a trace. How was I supposed to find the mysterious Zheng in a city of millions? I didn't give you a false name, he said quietly. Zheng is what my friends call me. I didn't want to be Li Zhenyu that night. I wanted to be someone who could fall in love without calculating the political implications. Fall in love? The words escaped as a whisper. I fell in love with you that night, Chen Xiaoyu. Completely, irrevocably, foolishly in love with a woman I'd known for 6 hours. His voice was rough with emotion. I spent months looking for you afterward. You did? Private investigators, wedding guest lists, every lead I could think of. You vanished like a ghost. He stepped closer. And then I saw you again in my father's garden, and I knew immediately. Not just you, him. The way he tilted his head, the way he smiled. I knew he was mine. Tears were streaming down my face now. Zhenyu, I love you, he said desperately. I loved you then, I love you now, and I love the beautiful boy you gave me. Please don't push me away again. Please give us a chance. So we're really a family now? Rui asked that evening as we sat in Li Weiming's elegant living room, sharing dinner like we'd done it 1,000 times before. It's not quite that simple, sweetheart, I began carefully. Why not? Rui looked between Zhenyu and me with 5-year-old logic. You're my mama, he's my Baba, Grandpa Li is my grandpa. That's a family. Out of the mouths of babes, Li Weiming murmured, clearly delighted with his grandson's assessment. Rui's right, Zhenyu said quietly. It is that simple. Everything else is just details we need to work out. Details like where we live, how we handle the media attention, how we blend 2 completely different lives. I shook my head. Those aren't small details, Xiaoyu. Then we'll figure them out together. He reached across the table, covering my hand with his. Xiaoyu, I know this is overwhelming. I know you're scared, but we have something real here. We always did. Isn't it worth fighting for? Before I could answer, Rui yawned widely, his head drooping toward his plate. Someone's tired, Li Weiming observed fondly. Why don't I show you to the guest rooms? You can stay the night, get a fresh start in the morning. We should go home, I protested. School tomorrow. I'll arrange for a driver to take Rui to school, Chen Yu said quickly. Please, Xiaoyu, just stay. One night. The guest suite was larger than my entire apartment, decorated in soft blues and creams that made it feel like a luxury hotel. Rui was asleep within minutes of his head hitting the silk pillowcase, exhausted by the day's emotional revelations. I was standing on the balcony, looking out at the garden lights, when Chen Yu appeared in the doorway. Can't sleep? He asked softly. Too much to process. I wrapped my arms around myself against the cool night air. 6 hours ago, I was a single mother working in a bakery. Now suddenly I'm, what? Part of the Li family? If you want to be. He moved to stand beside me at the railing, careful not to crowd me. Xiaoyu, I know my world can be overwhelming. The money, the attention, the expectations. But none of that matters if you're not happy. And what would make me happy? That's what I'm trying to figure out. He turned to face me fully. What do you want, Xiaoyu? Not what you think you should want. Not what other people expect. What do you actually want? The question hung between us like a challenge. What did I want? I wanted to wake up every morning knowing my son was safe and loved. I wanted to build something beautiful with my hands, whether it was bread or a business or a life. I wanted someone to come home to at the end of hard days, someone who looked at me like I was precious. I wanted him. I want you, I whispered, the admission tearing from my throat. I want this. Us. Our family, whatever that looks like. But I'm terrified, Chen Yu. What if we can't make it work? What if the differences between our worlds are too big to bridge? What if Rui gets caught in the middle when everything falls apart? Then we'll figure it out as we go, he said simply. Together, as a family. He cupped my face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away tears I didn't realize had fallen. I love you, Chen Xiaoyu. I love your strength, your kindness, the way you've raised our son to be generous and brave and wise. I love that you make the best coffee in the city and that you read bedtime stories with different voices for every character. I love everything about you, and I want to spend the rest of my life proving it. When he kissed me, soft and sweet and full of promise, I felt something settle in my chest, something that felt like coming home. Reality intruded 3 days later in the form of paparazzi cameras and screaming headlines. Li Air's secret son revealed. Billionaire's hidden family. From bakery to boardroom, the Cinderella story. The photos were everywhere. Chen Yu leaving my apartment building, but 3 of us at the park, Rui on his father's shoulders looking deliriously happy. Some enterprising journalist had even gotten pictures of us at the Li estate, making it look like I was already living there. We need to control this narrative, Chen Yu's crisis management team advised during an emergency meeting at Li Group headquarters. A press conference, carefully scripted responses. No, I said firmly. I won't turn our family into a media circus. Miss Chen, the lead publicist, said carefully. With respect, this story is already out there. We can either control how it's told, or we can let others tell it for us. And what happens to Rui in all this? He's 5 years old. He didn't choose to be the center of a media storm. We'll protect him, Chen Yu said quietly. Security, private school if necessary, whatever it takes. You want to put him in a bubble? I stood up abruptly, pacing to the window. That's not the childhood I want for him. I want him to have friends, to ride his bike in the neighborhood, to be normal. Normal isn't possible anymore, Li Weiming said gently. The moment his parentage became public knowledge, that option disappeared. Now we have to decide how to give him the best life possible within these new constraints. Before anyone could respond, Lu Fei burst into the conference room without knocking, something that would have been unthinkable under normal circumstances. Sir, he said breathlessly, we have a problem. Someone's leaked Rui's school address to the media. There are photographers at the gates. My blood turned to ice. Is he safe? Security is with him, but... Lu Fei hesitated. There's more. Miss Su has given an interview to City Life magazine. It's not favorable. The interview was a masterpiece of character assassination disguised as concern. I feel so sorry for that little boy, Sumei told the reporter with practiced sympathy. Thrust into the spotlight like this, used as a pawn in his mother's social climbing. Children need stability, not constant media attention and sudden lifestyle changes. She went on to question my fitness as a mother, my motives for suddenly revealing Rui's parentage, and my ability to handle the pressures of being connected to the Li family. Of course, if there really was some beautiful love story 5 years ago, one has to wonder why she never tried to contact Li Zhenyu when she discovered she was pregnant. Sumei mused to the interviewer. Was she planning to use the child as leverage, or did she simply not know who the father was? The insinuation hit like a physical blow, but it was the final paragraph that made me feel physically sick. Sources close to the situation suggest that social services may need to investigate whether this sudden upheaval is in the child's best interests. A responsible mother would put her son's welfare above her own romantic aspirations. She's threatening to call social services, I said numbly, staring at the magazine article. She's actually threatening to try to take my son away. She can try, Zhenyu said, his voice deadly calm, but she'll fail. We have resources, the best lawyers, and most importantly, we have the truth. The truth? I laughed bitterly. The truth is that I raised our son alone for 5 years because I was too proud and too scared to try harder to find you. The truth is that I'm exactly what she says I am, a baker who got lucky. The truth, Li Weiming interjected firmly, is that you're a loving mother who's raised an extraordinary child under difficult circumstances. The truth is that my son has been miserable for 5 years because he lost the woman he loved. And the truth is that Rui is exactly where he belongs, with his family. Before I could respond, my phone rang. Mrs. Chen's number. Xiaoyu. Her voice was tight with worry. You need to come to the bakery, now. What's wrong? Just come, and bring Zhenyu with you. When we arrived at Chen's bakery, I was stunned to find a crowd gathered outside. But instead of reporters or protesters, it was my neighbors, my customers, people from the community who'd watched Rui grow up. Mrs. Wang from the flower shop next door was holding a handmade sign. We support Xiaoyu and Rui. Old Mr. Zhang had brought his entire extended family. Even some of Rui's classmates' parents were there with their children. What's all this? I asked Mrs. Chen in amazement. People who know you, she said simply. People who've watched you work 18-hour days to provide for that boy. Who've seen how much love and care you put into raising him. When that awful woman's interview came out, they wanted to do something. Mrs. Liu stepped forward, holding her granddaughter's hand. That magazine made you sound like some kind of gold digger. But we know better. We know you've never asked for help from anyone, not even when you were pregnant and working until the day you gave birth. You taught my daughter to read, another woman said. Spent hours with her after school when I was working double shifts. You gave us free bread during the flooding last year when half the neighborhood lost their jocks, Mr. Chen from the hardware store added. One by one they spoke up, sharing stories of small kindnesses, quiet generosity, the ways I'd become woven into the fabric of their community without even realizing it. You're not just Rui's mother, Mrs. Wang said firmly. You're our girl, and we don't let people attack our own. I was crying openly now, overwhelmed by this unexpected show of support. Beside me, Zhenyu was watching the scene with wonder. This is what you're afraid of losing, he said quietly, his voice full of understanding. This community, this life you've built. Yes, I whispered. Then we won't lose it, he said simply. We'll find a way to keep everything that matters. That night, after Rui was asleep and the media circus had died down to a dull roar, Zhenyu found me sitting in the bakery kitchen, kneading tomorrow's bread dough with perhaps more force than necessary. Stress baking? He asked, settling onto a stool at the counter. Therapeutic baking, I corrected. There's a difference. Ah, and what's the therapeutic benefit of beating innocent dough into submission? Despite everything, I smiled. It's very satisfying to pound something that can't fight back. In that case, would you like to pound Su Mei into submission? I can arrange it. Don't tempt me. I shaped the dough into loaves, my movements automatic after years of practice. Zhenyu, what are we doing, really? Because this feels impossible. What feels impossible? All of it, your world, my world, trying to blend them without losing what matters most. I gestured around the quiet bakery. These people who came to support me today, they're my family too. This community, this life, I can't just abandon it all to play house in your mansion. Who said anything about abandoning it? I looked up, surprised by his tone. Xiaoyu, what if I told you that you don't have to choose between your old life and a new one? What if we could build something that incorporated both? What do you mean? Instead of answering, he pulled out his phone and showed me a document. This is a business proposal for a chain of community bakeries, high-quality ingredients, fair wages for employees, partnerships with local suppliers, anchored by Chen's Bakery as the flagship location. My hand stilled on the bread loaves. You want to franchise the bakery? I want to help you build an empire, he said seriously. Not because you need my money or my connections, but because you have a vision worth expanding. You've created something beautiful here, a place that feeds people's bodies and souls. Why shouldn't there be dozens of them? Zhenyu, and before you say it's too much, or you're not qualified, or any of the other excuses I can see forming in your mind, you've already proved you can do this. You've run a successful business, raised an incredible child, and built a community that would go to war for you. You're the most qualified person I know. I stared at the business plan, my heart racing with possibility and terror in equal measure. There's something else, he said quietly, sliding off the stool to kneel beside my chair. My breath caught as he pulled out a small velvet box. I know this is fast, and I know you're scared, and I know there are 1,000 reasons why this is complicated. He opened the box to reveal a stunning but simple solitaire diamond. But I love you, Chen Xiaoyu. I love you and our son and the life we could build together. Marry me. Not because it's expected or convenient or good for business, but because I want to wake up next to you every morning for the rest of my life. The ring was beautiful, elegant but not ostentatious, classic but with unique details that spoke of careful thought and consideration for my taste. The diamond came from my mother's collection, he said softly, but I had it reset in a new design. Old and new together, like what we're building. Zhenyu, Mama? Baba? We turned to see Rui standing in the doorway in his pajamas, rubbing sleepy eyes. What are you doing up, sweetheart? I asked, my voice shaky. I heard talking. He padded over to us, taking in the scene with 5-year-old directness. Are you asking Mama to marry you? Yes, Zhenyu said simply. Is that okay with you? Rui considered this with the gravity of a UN diplomat. Will you be nice to Mama? Always. Will you read me bedtime stories? Every night. Will we still live near Mrs. Chen and my friends? If that's what makes you and your Mama happy. Rui nodded solemnly, then broke into the brightest smile I'd ever seen. Then yes, Mama should marry you. He threw his arms around both of us, creating an impromptu family huddle. Can I be in the wedding? Can I wear a fancy suit like yours? You can wear the fanciest suit in the whole city, Zhenyu promised, his voice thick with emotion. And can we have cake? A really, really big cake? The biggest cake you've ever seen, I said, laughing through my tears. Good, Rui declared with satisfaction. Then everything's perfect. As simple as that. In Rui's 5-year-old wisdom, love plus commitment plus cake equaled perfection. Why had I been making it so complicated? I looked at Zhenyu, this man who'd appeared in my bakery like an answered prayer, who'd knelt on my flour-dusted floor to propose with a ring that honored both past and future. This man who'd listened to my fears and offered solutions that let me keep everything I cherished while gaining everything I dreamed of. Yes, I whispered. Yes? His eyes searched my face as if he couldn't quite believe it. Yes, I'll marry you. Yes to the business proposal. Yes to building something beautiful together. I cupped his face in my floury hands. Yes to all of it. When he kissed me, with our son cheering and clapping between us, I felt the last of my walls crumble. This was what happiness felt like. Messy and overwhelming and absolutely perfect. 6 months later, the wedding was everything the media had predicted and nothing like they'd expected. Instead of a glittering hotel ballroom, we chose the Lee family estate's garden, where jasmine vines climbed ancient walls and fairy lights twinkled between flowering trees. The same place Zhenyu and I had kissed under the stars 5 years ago, coming full circle. My dress was simple but elegant, ivory silk with delicate beading, designed by a local artist rather than a famous fashion house. Rui wore a miniature version of his father's tuxedo, with the most important job of all, ring bearer. Do you have the rings, best man? I asked him as we waited in the bridal suite. Right here, Mama. He patted his pocket carefully. Baba said the rings are the most important part because they mean we're a real family forever and ever. We were already a real family, sweetheart. I know, he said seriously, but now everyone else knows too. The guest list was a perfect blend of both our worlds. Zhenyu's business associates and high society friends mingled with my neighbors from the bakery district. Chen had insisted on making all the desserts herself, declaring that store-bought wedding cakes have no soul. Li Weiming spent the entire reception teaching Rui's classmates how to play chess, completely charmed by their endless questions about his really big house. But the moment that took my breath away wasn't the ceremony itself, beautiful as it was. It was afterward, during the reception, when I found Zhenyu and Rui sitting together on a quiet bench, deep in conversation. "What are you two plotting?" I asked, settling beside them in my wedding dress. "Baba was telling me about Grandma Li," Rui said softly, "the one who's in heaven now. He wanted to know if she would have liked him," Zhenyu explained, his arm coming around me automatically. "And what did you tell him?" "That she would have loved him exactly the way his Grandpa Li does, completely, unconditionally, with her whole heart." Zhenyu's voice was gentle, and that she would have been so proud of the strong, kind woman who raised him. My eyes filled with tears. "She would have loved you too, you know. Your compassion, your determination to protect the people you care about. She would have seen what I see, that you're exactly the kind of man she raised her son to be." "Do you think she can see us now?" Rui asked, looking up at the star-filled sky. "I think," Li Weiming said, appearing behind us with a gentle smile, "that she's been watching over all of us for a very long time. Especially you, little one." Later that night, after all the guests had gone home and Rui was fast asleep in the estate's guest room, Zhenyu and I walked through the garden hand in hand. Mrs. Zhenyu Li, I thought, testing the name in my mind. It felt right, like a key fitting into a lock. "Any regrets?" Zhenyu asked, reading my expression in the moonlight. "Just one," I said seriously. His face fell. "What?" "I regret that it took us 5 years to find each other again." I stopped walking and turned to face him. "Think of all the mornings we missed, all the bedtime stories you couldn't read, all the family dinners we didn't share. We'll make up for lost time," he promised, pulling me closer. "We have the rest of our lives." "The rest of our lives," I repeated, marveling at how those words no longer felt overwhelming but wonderful. "That's a long time, Mr. Li." "Not nearly long enough, Mrs. Li." 1 year later, the first Chen's Community Bakery satellite location opened in the Pudong district to lines around the block. The formula we developed was simple but revolutionary: locally sourced ingredients, living wages for all employees, and a commitment to being a genuine gathering place for each neighborhood we entered. "Mama, there are news cameras here," Rui announced excitedly, peering out the window of our original location. "Yes, sweetheart. They want to talk about the new bakery." "Are you nervous?" I considered the question seriously. 6 months ago, the idea of being interviewed about our business would have terrified me. But now, watching my employees, many of them single mothers like I'd been, proudly serving customers and supporting their families with good jobs, I felt only excitement. "No," I realized with surprise. "I'm not nervous at all." The interview went better than I dared hope. The reporter, a young woman from the business channel, asked thoughtful questions about community development, sustainable business practices, and work-life balance. Not once did she mention my fairy tale marriage or ask invasive questions about our personal life. "Mrs. Li," she concluded, "what advice would you give to other entrepreneurs who are afraid to take big risks?" "I tell them that the biggest risk isn't failing," I said, thinking of all the fears I'd overcome in the past year. "The biggest risk is never trying at all." And I tell them that you don't have to choose between your dreams and your values. With the right partner and enough determination, you can build something that honors both. After the cameras left, I found Zhenyu in his makeshift office in the back of the bakery. He'd been working from our original location more and more often, claiming he liked the creative energy better than his corporate headquarters. "How'd it go?" he asked, looking up from his laptop. "Good, really good." I settled into the chair across from his desk. Our desk. Really, we'd become true partners in every sense of the word. The reporter said preliminary numbers suggest the Pudong location will be profitable within 6 months. "I told you it would work. You told me a lot of things would work. The business, the blended family, the media attention, living between two worlds." I smiled. "You were right about all of it." "Not all of it," he said mysteriously, closing his laptop. there's still one thing we haven't quite figured out. What's that? Whether our next child will inherit your business sense or my stubborn streak. My breath caught. Our next child? Well, he said casually, as if he wasn't dropping a bombshell. Ruli's been asking for a little brother or sister, and my father keeps mentioning how much he'd like more grandchildren to spoil. And we do have that big house with plenty of bedrooms. Zhenyu Li, I said, standing up slowly. Are you asking me if I want to have another baby? I'm asking if you want to expand our family. In our own time, when we're ready, with no pressure from anyone else. He stood too, coming around the desk to take my hands. What do you think, Mrs. Li? Ready for our next adventure? I thought about Rui's joy when he'd gained a father and grandfather. I thought about the love that seemed to multiply rather than divide when it was shared. I thought about tiny hands and sleepy cuddles and the miracle of watching Zhenyu become a father all over again. I think, I said, reaching up to kiss him, that sounds like the best adventure yet. 5 years later. Mama, Li Wei is trying to eat the frosting again. I looked up from the wedding cake I was decorating to see my 3-year-old daughter, Li Mei, standing in the bakery doorway with her hands on her hips, a pose she'd clearly learned from watching me deal with difficult situations. Wei Wei, I called to my 18-month-old son, who was indeed sitting on the floor with chocolate frosting smeared across his chubby cheeks. What are we going to do with you? Up, he demanded, raising sticky arms toward me. After we clean you up, I laughed, scooping him into my arms. At 18 months, Li Wei was already showing signs of inheriting both his father's determination and his older brother's mischievous streak. The happy couple is here for the final tasting, Mrs. Chen announced, appearing with 10-year-old Rui close behind. Did you finish your homework? I asked him automatically. Yes, and I helped Grandpa Li with his speech for tonight. And I set up the chairs in the garden, and I made sure all the flowers looked perfect, he recited proudly. Can I help with the cake now? At 10, Rui had grown into a thoughtful, responsible boy who moved easily between the bakery world and Li family obligations. He spoke Mandarin with his grandfather, English with his international school friends, and the local dialect with our bakery customers, adapting to each environment with natural grace. Careful with the fondant roses, I instructed as he joined me at the decorating table. Your Aunt Lily will never forgive us if her wedding cake isn't perfect. Yes, Lily, my friend who dragged me to that fateful charity gala 5 years ago, was finally marrying her longtime boyfriend. And yes, she'd insisted that only Chen's Community Bakery could provide the desserts for her reception. Everything looks beautiful, Lily said, appearing in her wedding dress for the final fitting. Xiaoyu, I can't believe you managed to recreate those desserts from the Golden Phoenix Hotel. Mrs. Chen's recipes, I said modestly. I just followed her instructions. And added your own touches, the elderly woman corrected firmly. Child, you've been creating your own magic for years now. It's time you admitted it. As if summoned by our voices, Zhenyu appeared in the doorway with Li Weiming close behind. Even after 5 years of marriage, my heart still skipped when I saw my husband, today dressed casually in jeans and a white shirt, his sleeves rolled up, looking every inch the hands-on father and partner he'd become. How are my favorite girls? He asked, kissing May's forehead and then mine. Wei Wei got into the frosting again, May reported solemnly. Again? Zhenyu raised an eyebrow at our youngest son, who responded with a chocolate-stained grin. What are we going to do with you, little man? Love him, spoil him, and teach him better boundaries, Li Weiming said dryly, taking his youngest grandson from my arms, just like we did with all the others. Speaking of which, Zhenyu said, producing an envelope from his pocket, the adoption papers for the Shanghai location came through. Mrs. Zhou will officially take over as owner-operator next month. Our business model had evolved over the years. Rather than simply expanding as a corporation, we'd developed a system where longtime employees could eventually buy their locations, becoming true community partners rather than just managers. It was slower growth but more sustainable, creating genuine investment in each neighborhood we served. That's wonderful, I said, reviewing the documents. She'll be perfect for that community. Mama, Rui said quietly, do you ever miss it when it was just you and me? The question caught me off guard. I looked at my eldest son, no longer the tiny boy who'd once stood on chairs to help me arrange pastries, but a thoughtful young person growing into his own identity. I miss some things about those days, I said honestly. The quiet mornings, the way you used to fall asleep on my lap while I did paperwork. But missing parts of the past doesn't mean I want to go back, sweetheart. It just means those memories are precious. Good, he said with relief. Because I like having a big family, even when Wei Wei eats all the frosting. Even then, I agreed, ruffling his hair. Later that evening, after Lily's wedding reception had wound down and our children were asleep in the estate's guest rooms, Chen Yu and I walked through the same garden where we'd been married 5 years ago. The jasmine vines had grown thicker, the fairy lights had been updated to solar power, but the magic remained the same, he asked, echoing our wedding night conversation. Just one, I said, playing along with our old routine. What's that? I regret that there are only 24 hours in a day. I want more time for everything. The bakery, the kids, you, building this beautiful chaos we call our life. I think we're doing pretty well with the time we have, he said, pulling me closer. Pretty well, I agreed. Though I still can't believe that scared young woman in the bakery turned into someone who runs board meetings and gives interviews about social entrepreneurship. I can, he said firmly. She was always there, just waiting for the right moment to emerge. We stood in comfortable silence, listening to the city sounds beyond the estate walls. Somewhere out there, young couples were falling in love for the first time. Somewhere, single mothers were working late shifts and dreaming of better futures for their children. Somewhere, lonely people were hoping for connections, for belonging, for the kind of love that changes everything. Do you think we'll have more adventures? I asked. With 3 children, 2 businesses, and your tendency to say yes to every community project that needs help? Chen Yu laughed. Mrs. Li, I guarantee we haven't even begun to see what adventures await us. Good, I said, reaching up to kiss him under the starlight. I'm ready for all of them. As we walked back toward the house where our children slept peacefully and our future waited to unfold, I thought about fate and choice, about the night that changed everything and all the days that followed. Love, I'd learned, wasn't just the dramatic moment of recognition. It was also the daily choice to build something beautiful together, one conversation and one compromise and one shared dream at a time. And I'd choose this life, this love, this beautiful chaos again and again and again.